Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June Career Coffee session on diversifying your network. Today, we will be exploring overcoming unconscious biases, tapping into new talent pools, and ultimately fostering a more inclusive and connected PR community. I am thrilled to introduce our moderator, Kelly Williams. She is the CEO of the Brand Lab, a nonprofit on a mission to change the face of the marketing and advertising profession. Kelly is going to be guiding the conversation with Hammy Huynh, the talent acquisition and DEI manager at Cole McVoy, and Jen Abbey, the program manager for Take Flight, an inclusive communications career explorer. So beyond their impressive career achievements, all three of these people are champions for diversity and inclusion in our field. And I expect it's just going to be a great conversation. So please drop any questions you have throughout the conversation in the chat. And I'll pass it to Kelly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody today? Thumbs up, happy faces, thumbs up. Good, nice. It's good to see such a nice turnout. Hopefully additional people will join us as we go as well. So again, I'm Kelly Williams. I have the pleasure of leading the Brand Lab, which is a nonprofit focused on changing the face and the voice of the marketing, advertising, PR, communications community. And as the moderator today, I'm going to take the team through and spend about 45 minutes talking about a lot of questions we talked about and planned to really think about and respond to give you all some thought starters. And as we're doing that, I'm going to ask you to also think about what other questions you have. Start to throw them in chat or write them down, and we'll ensure that we keep some time at the end, about 15 minutes, to make sure that we answer the questions you all have. So before we jump in, I'm going to have our two panelists introduce themselves. Jen, do you want to go ahead and start? And then Hammy, we'll have you go next.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kelly and Katie, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Jen Abbey, and I'm the program manager for Take Flight, an inclusive communications career exploration. We used to be called the Twin Cities PR BIPOC Career Explorer, so you may have heard of us under that name as well. But this program was founded by 6 local award-winning firms: Carmichael Lynch Relate, Exponent, Hotwire, Padilla, Thunheim, and Weber Shandwick, following the murder of George Floyd. Leaders from these agencies came together at that time, took a look around at what was happening in our community, and said, we need to take some action. So our mission is to diversify the makeup of the industry and the messages we put into it by connecting with college juniors and seniors who are exposed to, we call it an externship. During the school year, they attend workshops twice a month, and they're also paired one-on-one with a working professional in a mentor-mentee relationship. So I'm very proud to represent that group and happy to be here with you this morning.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Hammy Huynh. Thanks for having me here as a panelist. I'm super excited to chat with you all today. A little context about me: I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2020, and I started my career as an intern at a small independent creative agency called Fast Horse, and kind of worked my way up to becoming the manager of influencer and brand partnerships during the 2 years that I was there. My client portfolio includes brands like Heineken, Dunkin', and Audi, among others. I think my passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging led me to my current role as the talent acquisition and DEI manager at Cole McVoy. In this role, I oversee Cole McVoy's DEIB initiatives. I help lead our employee resource groups and overall champion change for a better future in the advertising industry by hiring and elevating professionals and that are representative talent. So nice to meet you all.
That's fantastic. Thank you both for those introductions. Okay, so we have a series of questions that are broken into different categories. The first category of questions is all around overcoming networking biases. We all know there are biases out there from a networking perspective. In addition to feeling sometimes overwhelmed or like we have to courageously show up in networking spaces, there are also some biases that come into play. Some of those unconscious or conscious biases that we all have as to what we think of someone when we see them, what we believe to be sort of their story that we write for them very quickly in seconds when we first see them in a space. Let's talk about this and let's dive a little bit deeper into how we can look to overcome some of these biases as leaders, which I think each of us are in our own seat. So my first question is, how can PR professionals identify and work to overcome biases that might limit their networking circles? Jen, I'll ask you to go first, and then I have some thoughts on this one as well.
Great, thank you so much. One tool that I learned about many years ago that I would love to make sure everyone who's joined this call today is aware of is called Project Implicit, also known as the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. So this is an organization seeking to advance scientific understanding of prejudice, stereotypes, and group bias. So I'll put the link to this organization's tests in the chat in just a moment. But just want to acknowledge, Kelly mentioned, unconscious bias. We are, as human beings, are all hardwired for bias. It's a survival instinct that has evolved with us over as long as humans have existed. So there really is no avoiding it. Learning about it and acknowledging it is an important way to overcome your own personal biases and also educate those around you. So this free online test will help make you aware of your own biases, whether it's white versus Black, Asian, Hispanic, age, transgender, religion. There are a number of free tests online. And I would encourage you to spend some time taking some of those tests and really giving it some thought. A second way to overcome biases is educating yourself about microaggressions. I don't know how many of you have heard about these, but like implicit bias, most people don't know that they're cueing kind of a sense of insubordination when they're making comments or doing behaviors that would qualify as a microaggression. And generally, again, it's not intentional, but if you've never been on the receiving end of this type of microaggression, you won't understand how hurtful and counterproductive it could be. So, one example for me is a man walking into a room full of women saying, "Hey guys, I don't identify as a guy," and it might not seem like that big of a deal, but over the course of, 25-year career, that's, just an example of a microaggression. Another example is maybe someone who would ask an African-American person, "Can I touch your hair?" So that's an example of a microaggression. So on the flip side, while you're researching microaggressions, do some thinking about micro affirmations. This is a term that's kind of new to me, but these are comments that provide support and validation to those who might identify from different groups. So once you start looking into micro affirmations, I guarantee you that some of your favorite people and your favorite coworkers practice these things. So definitely look into that. And then lastly, I mentioned Take Flight formed specifically after George Floyd's murder, but there's still a lot of work to do in all of our communities. So learn about what's happening at the grassroots level in your own neighborhood, in your own community, and seek out those organizations and also pay attention to anti-racism work at the national level.
Thank you so much, Jen. I agree with so much of what you said. I also would add on, take inventory of who your friends are. Take inventory of who you're surrounding yourself with on purpose, right? Who are your friends that you spend time with? Who are the people you're networking with? What are the similarities between you and them? And do you have friends who are less similar to you? I can say for myself, right? I took this inventory about 5 years ago. I was writing a book and I wanted to hear from many different women in leadership to get insights to go into my book. And what I recognized was that my network of individuals was pretty homogenous. And I needed to, if I wanted to have diversity of thought, I needed to expand my own personal network. And so I would definitely encourage you to take inventory of who you're spending time with. For example, after the murder of George Floyd that Jen mentioned right here in Minnesota in 2020, I had a national publication reach out to me and they asked me to comment on what it was like to be a Black woman in leadership. At first, I was flattered. I, had been in marketing for 20 years, but no publication had ever asked to hear from me. I'd helped leaders get published, but gosh, not me. But what I also realized in that moment was I was being looked at and singled out specifically because my gender and my race. I didn't want to show up in that space. At that time, it didn't align with my personal brand. So instead, I took inventory of who I was around and what was happening in my own environment. And I actually wrote a thought leadership piece called Advice from Your One Black Friend, because what I realized is for many, many of my colleagues, for my friends, for my neighbors, I was that one Black friend in their life, and I didn't want to be. And so I provided lots of ideas and insights and what all of us can do to expand our network, our community, to take inventory, and to look to really build authentic relationships with people who have different lived experiences. The article was published in USA Today. It's available on my LinkedIn profile if you're interested. But that would be something I would definitely recommend, is just take inventory of how you're spending your time and if you're doing it purposefully. Okay. Next question, and I know we have such a short amount of time, so we're going to try to keep each of our responses to a minute or under. So the question is, what strategies for creating a more inclusive networking environment where everyone feels welcome could you recommend?
I think for me, if your organization has employee resource groups or infinity groups, I recommend you join them. And if you don't have any, I recommend that you speak with your executive leaders to secure budget and start them. It's a great place to start if you're looking to creating a more inclusive network environment. The space is already held for you, and you can simply join in on meetings to learn about different perspectives and lived experiences, or you can actively participate and make your organization a more welcoming space. We have 3 employee resource groups at Call McVoy, the first being the Inclusion Council, which is open to everyone at our agency. Then we have the BIPOC ERG, which is open to those who identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. And then we have the LGBTQIA plus ERG, which is open to those that identify as well as community allies. We understand that some of these groups should be open to all, while others, like our BIPOC ERG, should only include members that identify in order to better serve our BIPOC employees and meet their specific needs. Our goal with our ERGs is to really have a welcoming and safe space that's made for employees by employees, and to create a more inclusive working culture that attracts and retains diverse talent. Also, another strategy is our Inclusion Council ERG fosters room for networking between members by hosting monthly coffee conversations where we'll pair up 2 random members that opt into the program to meet and grab coffee together. So definitely recommend suggesting that too if your organization doesn't have something like that set up.
Thank you so much. Just to add on, something else I would recommend is getting beyond the surface level in networking of, so what do you do? What's your job, right? And asking questions like, what are you looking forward to this summer? Or do you have any, exciting vacations coming up? I think we can start to build more real, authentic conversations where people can feel seen and heard and valued when we get beyond the what's your rank and position? And if it's not high enough, there's this perception of, well, I'm not that interested in talking with you, right? And so going beyond some of those traditional aspects of networking questions into questions that are purposely designed to help people feel comfortable showing up as their authentic self. To say, one of the things I'm really looking forward to this summer, right? For me, I was looking forward to Juneteenth. My family went to 10 different Juneteenth celebrations over the last week. I was so excited to be in so many different communities and to experience the differences. So that's what I would have shared, which would have never come into a networking conversation if someone just said, what do you do? So that would be my biggest recommendation. Okay. I'm going to move us to the next section of questions, which is building a diverse network. My first question is, what are some tips for fostering genuine connections with people whose professional experiences differ from your own? Jen, I'll hear from you first, and then Hammy would love your perspective on this too.
Great. Well, everyone here has done the first step, right? You're here this morning. You've decided this is a topic that's of importance to you, and you've, claimed your personal authority as someone who is going to take responsibility for improving your network moving forward or diversifying your network. So keep exploring. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable has sort of been one of my mantras the last few years. So, practically speaking, when you're seeking out to connect with someone from a background that's different than yours, I truly believe if you're coming from a place of goodwill, of authenticity, with positive intention, that you'll be able to handle any challenges that come your way. I think one of the biggest challenges is not feeling like an expert. But fortunately, that feeling means we're learning and we're expanding our experience. So tips for fostering those genuine connections, be curious and also be present. Make the most of the individual's time that you're speaking with. I think is really important. And I see a question here in the chat. If you're a freelancer or you're, in a small solo environment, what advice can you provide? I think connecting with folks through events like this or other local networking type of activities, show up at those. Bring your open heart and your curiosity and your desire to connect with someone. I absolutely agree with what Kelly said about find something beyond like, what is your job title and who do you work for? How else does this person identify? Are they a parent or a pet parent? What neighborhoods have they lived in and what are their favorite restaurants? And, there are other things that you can discuss to find that common connection to strengthen that relationship.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Jen outlined. And I also wanted to share, I recently read an article and I can't remember where it's from. I'll have to find it and drop it in the chat later. But it talked about how more recent research supports the notion that people who are connected across heterogeneous groups and those who have more diverse contacts actually come up with more creative ideas and original solutions. So despite these clear benefits, I think a lot of people tend to connect with others whose perspectives, backgrounds, and cultural norms are very similar to their own. But whether or not your daily work requires engaging with different types of people, you can definitely benefit from developing a network that inspires new ideas and challenges your beliefs. Like Kelly mentioned earlier, take a look at your own friend group. When I look at my closest friends, I'm the only one that works in advertising. My friend Allison is a fashion designer, and my friend Tina is an editor at the Twin Cities Business Magazine. And what weaves the three of us together is our creativity as well as our interests outside of work. So I definitely think that, what Jen said, finding common ground between your professions as well as your personal interests is key. And professionally speaking, I know my agency is always looking for vendors, partners, talents, and clients. And I find myself tapping into my own network first to share those types of opportunities, because at the end of the day, I want to see all of my friends thrive. And I know that we can support each other's goals by referring each other or connecting one another to different opportunities. So definitely keep an eye out for different possibilities to collaborate between your network, even if you are in different professions.
I love that. Thank you both. Sort of on the flip side of that, when you think about trying to step outside of your comfort zone and out of your network and out of the people that you've naturally surrounded yourself with because of some similarities, what are some of the challenges that you can foresee of when you step outside of that comfort zone, from a networking perspective, from a friendship perspective, in the workplace perspective? What are some of the challenges that maybe you've personally experienced or that you could anticipate experiencing? And then how would you think to overcome it? Or maybe how have you overcome? Jen, I'd love to ask this question of you.
The word that comes to mind is practice, right? Like, we did not get to where we are in our careers by not practicing our skills and failing, making mistakes, learning, growing. So it's absolutely the same when it comes to connecting with people from diverse backgrounds. So, in addition to, reaching out, maybe it's someone who doesn't even work in your same discipline in the industry. I think cross-discipline networking opens a lot of doors that maybe, I think generally speaking, textbook networking, it's like, oh, I'm going to network with people so that I can get like the next greatest job, right? It's like, well, if that's not your intention, if your intention is you're doing this to diversify your network, then maybe look outside of your specific discipline. But regarding practice, like, you could take time to visit new places, go to a coffee shop in a neighborhood that you've never visited before, and just experience what it's like to be new somewhere. Or grab a friend and go to the Somali Mall in Minneapolis or whatever, just to get more used to that feeling of I'm not an expert here, and that's okay because I'm learning.
That's really good. I think I would add on and just say, so I've been in marketing for over 20 years, and in every single organization I've worked in, as an advertising agency professional, as a corporate marketing person, I've always been the only person of color or the only Black person in every single one of those spaces. It's been uncomfortable. Right. And so when I think about what are some of the challenges associated with stepping outside of your comfort zone, one of the biggest challenges I can anticipate is the level of discomfort of sometimes stepping into spaces in which you're not the majority, right? Stepping into spaces in which it could feel uncomfortable because you've never been in a space at a Juneteenth celebration, just, stepping back into yesterday, in which the majority of people don't look like you. It can feel uncomfortable. And I think, yes, practice. I also think becoming okay with feeling uncomfortable. For us all to learn and grow and to stretch ourselves, sometimes we have to purposely put ourselves in uncomfortable situations so that we can experience and understand and empathize with what other people feel from time to time. And so I think that would be my biggest recommendation, is get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. Become courageous in the conversations. I have friends that will say, I want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you this question. Please don't be offended. That setup of, you're going to ask me something because I'm a safe space for you. And if we have that level of friendship and relationship, I'm happy to be that safe space. I'm happy to say, yes, it's offensive when you say, gosh, did you get your hair cut? Every time I go from having my hair long and straight to curly. And guess what? Naturally, my hair gets shorter when it's curly because that's how it grew out of my head, because that's how God made me, right? Those types of conversations and questions I'm open to having with people who I have relationship with. On the flip side, to have that conversation with a person who I have very little relationship with, that would feel like a microaggression. that would feel like they felt too comfortable with me. And so it really, for me, comes down to relationship building and genuine relationship building. And when you have a genuine relationship, because you've gotten outside of your comfort zone, you've built authentic friendships with people who come from different experiences, races, ethnicities, gender, sexual orientation, family of origin, education level, everything that makes us who we are. When you have authentic relationships, now you have safe spaces to learn and grow in more true, authentic ways. Okay. Last question here. How can PR professionals leverage online platforms, professional organizations, and best practices to connect to a wider range of people? I think this is a great question. I would love to hear from both of you, Hami and Jen. What are some of the things you've personally done? Just, a couple of quick hits here, and then we'll go to the next question.
Yeah, I can touch on professional organizations. So I used to serve on the Add to Minnesota board as the director of DEI, and it was really great because I was able to meet like-minded individuals who worked in my profession but were outside of my company. And my favorite part of being a board member was I got a free ticket to every Add to and AdBed event, such as the show or the women's leadership panel. And so I tried to attend as many of these events as I could to both support my board members, but also expand my personal network. I also sit on the board of advocates for Backpack, which is a student-run communications agency at the University of Minnesota. I love mentoring the students as well as networking with the advertising professionals across the country who also sit on the board. I think joining a board is definitely a great way to give back to your community, but also connect with a wider range of people. There are so many different organizations out there, and so definitely do some research on which one suits your interests as well as your capacity. Be realistic with yourself. How much time outside of work do you actually have to commit to serving on a board? I think it's really important to ask yourself these types of questions and really engage as much as possible to get the most out of it.
I'll just add that, beyond sort of the professional range of thought, I think it's important to know what's going on in our country and in our communities. There's a newsletter that I subscribe to called Anti-Racism Daily, and I actually receive it weekly, but they do have like a daily newsletter, and they offer resources and training and facilitation, ideas for book clubs, but most importantly, kind of a capture of related topics happening around the world that will educate you so that when you go to these different opportunities, you're aware of what's happening maybe outside of your community. And then for the last 2 years, I spent a bulk of my time and energy helping college students kind of transition from that student life to professional life. So LinkedIn is huge in that area. And if you are not already on there, I would recommend it. And it's a great platform for sharing information or articles or events that align with your values, just to help people understand, where you're coming from and what you're seeking. So take advantage of that one.
Thank you both. That's great. Just to add on from a LinkedIn perspective, there are so many different affinity groups within our profession or broadly that are available on LinkedIn, even a simple follow, so that the makeup of your LinkedIn feed can be diversified is a fantastic first step as well to consider. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. Next category of questions. What are some of the benefits of diverse networking, right? So we've talked about it's important. Here's some, practical ideas of how to start to be purposeful in creating a more diverse networking group. But what are some of the benefits? And when I think about benefits, when I think about the work that we do, I always think of it both from a heart and a head perspective, right? So from a heart perspective, why is it important to embrace diversity? And that's more of like it's the right thing to do, right? I care about humans. It's the right thing to do. From a head perspective, and Hammy had referenced this earlier, there's actually research that talks about diverse organizations, diverse networks, right? People that embrace diversity from that perspective. Organizations are more innovative and actually drive higher revenue. So there's a business sense, there's a head sense. And so when you think about the benefits of diverse networking, I'd love to hear from the two of you around just the importance, what are the benefits, and then how does that start to actually impact and help you advocate for diverse representation within our profession. Hammy, I'll hear from you first.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it truly is a business imperative that you diversify both your network and your organization. I think I'm going to speak about this from a perspective of a recruiter. So like as a recruiter and DEI leader in my agency, I think recruiting representative talent and diversifying our talent pool is literally part of my job description. And I think that we have this role because Call McCoy thinks it's truly is a business imperative that kind of ladders up to everything that we've been doing within DEIB. And while recruiters kind of lead the charge, we can't do our jobs alone. We highly depend on our colleagues' referrals for candidates, and we depend on hiring managers and interview teams to support our hiring goals. And while most of you probably aren't recruiters on this call, you may be pulled into the hiring process for your respective organizations at some point. And so I encourage you to, get trained on eliminating things like personal bias, and learning about equitable interviewing practices so we can really advocate for diversifying representation in the PR industry overall. And I also encourage you and your companies to support organizations like the Brand Lab with Kelly or Take Flight with Jen, or Add Color and the 4A's MAPE program, things like that, in order to support talent of color to get their foot in the door. Because I know from personal firsthand experience, being a person of color and a first generation college student, an immigrant, having those types of identities, it's so hard to get your foot in the door, because I didn't have connections, or my mom and dad really don't know what advertising is. And so you could literally be that person for someone else to mentor them, to support them, to champion for them to enter into this industry. And so definitely try to put yourself out there and be a resource for others.
Yeah, I love that. I also identify as an Asian American, and I play the role in elevating opportunities for young people coming up behind me. I also would encourage people who value this topic to, take advantage of the strong relationships you may have with folks in leadership positions, to have conversations, equitable interviewing practices, for example, um, is an invaluable practice. Like more organizations need to be taking a look at that. So ask questions. Is that something that your company or vendors that you've worked with are pursuing? I also think it's important for people to, I mentioned leveraging strong relationships with folks in leadership positions. Based on the strength of that relationship, I think it's okay to say something. If someone makes a comment and you're like, oh, I was just on this great PRSA panel, and they talked about microaggressions, and I did some research, and what you said was this, and what I heard was X, but what I think you meant is Y. Like, can we talk about this for a minute? Or if now's not a good time, maybe we can touch base tomorrow morning, and just, make people aware that you're listening. I think that helps play an important role. We already talked about employee resource groups. If that's not something that is available to you, maybe it's just a book club that you're going to start with some friends. So it could be very simple, up to like, I'm going to call out the CEO on microaggression. So yeah, a big range of roles. But know that, like, if you're not playing that role, like, it's possible that no one else will in that particular situation. may be up to you.
Yeah, that right there, I just want to put an exclamation point on. I think that one of the most important things we can do when we are advocating, not looking to take voices, right, or power away from our peers who may be diverse and we're not, but being the people who say, hey, I've noticed something and I want to talk about it. Not leaving it to your colleagues who are diverse to say, gosh, I'm offended. Right. But instead being someone who is an advocate, a champion to be part of that conversation. So thank you for mentioning that, Jen. My next question is, how can a broader network help PR professionals stay ahead of industry trends, right? Industry trends, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with industry trends. There's so much going on. So how can having a broader network with a more diverse base help us as PR professionals stay up to date? Love to hear from you on this one, Jen.
Sure, I'll go first. When I think of industry trends, I replace it with a different T word, tsunami, because things are constantly changing, and I often feel overwhelmed by just in what I don't know, right? So I think mid and senior level professionals can really benefit a lot from this idea of reverse mentoring. That's a benefit of our program, is that folks who have experience are matched with someone who is a college student who maybe is on the cutting edge of some of these new things that are coming out. My mentee last year taught me a lot about fashion trends, and I have to laugh because it's not like an area of interest for me, but I sincerely learned a lot about her culture, and also TikTok and things like that. So my program's target market is her age group, so it was helpful for me to have that. So I also just want to add, networking, it's a two-way street, right? You're seeking to learn from others, but don't forget that you have expertise and knowledge to share as well. So remember the gifts that you have to offer when you're thinking about networking. I mentioned cross discipline networking too, because there are trends in every aspect of our industry. So expanding who you're speaking to, maybe it's someone who is a producer, or someone who, is in a different area of the industry, and you can really open your mind to trends beyond the core focus of your daily job.
That's fantastic. Okay. Let's move to the next section, which is the section I'm the most excited to get to, and that we only have about 5 to 6 minutes left before we're going to transition to audience questions. But, we've spent a lot of time talking about things that are important, right? Why this work is important, the actionable steps, right? What can every single person on this call do today to start to take actionable steps to diversify their network? Love to talk a little bit about all of this. So my very first question, and I'm going to ask it of both of you, is what are concrete steps PR professionals can take today to start diversifying their network? Hammy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, yeah, everything that we talked about during this call so far, set up those informational interviews, reach out to people on LinkedIn, join professional boards, join your employee resource groups or affinity groups if you have them. Continue doing the work to learn about DEI best practices. There's something that my mentor, Jen Lagos, always says. She says, when you know better, you can do better. And so I hope that everything that you've learned so far on this call, you can take back with you today and to your organizations and to your network, and share with them the key learnings that you've gathered. And as a collective, when we know better, we can do better.
I love that. In addition to the resources that you just mentioned, I would encourage folks to take those implicit bias tests, talk to your friends and colleagues about it, and start spreading the word. That may open up some conversations or connections that didn't exist before. being on LinkedIn, following and sharing information on the same topic. And if you're interested in networking with college students, well, reach out to me. I'll drop my email in the chat. I would be more than happy to make introductions. And this may be a good time of year because during the school year, they tend to be super busy. So, if you're in the Twin Cities or even in other markets, we've had students from other markets come through the program who are interested in networking, and you may learn a thing or two from them, whether it's fashion on TikTok or something else. So yeah, just, follow your heart, and those connections will come.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, my next question. How can we leverage our networks to support and mentor professionals from groups that haven't been as widely represented inside of the PR profession as other groups? Anything in addition to the question I just asked that you would add on when I reframe it that way?
I guess from Call McVoy's perspective, we do partner with, the Brand Lab and Take Flight, as well as the 4A's MAPE program. We offer internships and externships to students from underrepresented groups. And so we're constantly looking for volunteers to mentor or to manage and support our interns and externs. And so I definitely recommend checking in with your company to see if they have similar opportunities that you can kind of raise your hand for. And I also recommend signing up for local mentorship programs like Wintry Mix, Boundaryless, and Art Buddies if you have capacity outside of work to support young, underrepresented professionals. And if you do get involved, I definitely encourage you to encourage those in your own networks to also sign up with you, because the more the merrier, right?
Absolutely. I would add on, and just when I think about mentorship, and Amy, you've done a really nice job of bringing it up a few times. It's the only volunteer as much as you can, right? Don't overcommit. And I'm an overcommitter, and so I love that, and just want to reemphasize: don't overcommit. Something that I do in addition to the people who I personally mentor on an ongoing basis is I purposely do what I would call like micro mentorship. I'll have a young person or a woman in the profession reach out to me and just ask for time. And I will meet with anyone, right? So I will spend 30 minutes meeting with anyone. And I always say, come prepared with whatever you want to talk about. What is it? What's the question, right? And a lot of times it's how did you get into the profession? Or I'm having this challenge with landing my first job, or I have there was something that maybe I posted about that sparked a question for them of, I'm having a really hard time working through a situation inside of my office, or whatever that looks like. I probably spend about 2 to 3 hours a week having micro mentorship conversations with people of color and women inside and around our profession. And so opening yourself up to that idea as well, where it doesn't have to be a long-standing mentorship relationship, but each of us have so much that we have experienced through our profession. Making yourself available to share, to listen, to hear, and ensure people feel valued is another way that you can provide mentorship without overcommitting. I truly have time hold on my calendar. And when those times are filled, then we go to the next weeks of scheduling time in. But I really spend about 2 to 3 hours a week having micro mentorship meetings. And it's something I highly recommend. It also feeds me because I love the opportunity to give back and pay forward the investments that have been made into my career.
The only other thing I would add to this topic is empathy and grace. I'm a recovering overcommitter as well. And one thing that struck me this last academic year with our group of students is it goes both ways. Like, it's not unusual for someone to miss an email or not follow up. A student might say, oh, I didn't get back from this person. It's like, well, did you send a second reminder? Like, hey, just following up. And no, they hadn't. And as soon as they did, the person responded and was like, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for the reminder. Like, yes, I am definitely interested in this. I just, people have a lot of things going on. So, if at first you don't hear back, try again.
Yeah, it's really good. Okay. We're going to open it up for questions here in just a minute, but before we do, I have one last question that I'd love to ask both of our panelists, and that question is, as we thought through and went through, several categories of questions today, there were a lot of things that we talked about, but I'm sure I didn't ask every single question that you would have wanted me to ask so that you could have ensured you shared all of your perspective on this topic. So, Jen and then Hammy, if I was to ask you one final question, what would you want that question to be, and how would you answer it?
I think we did a good job of covering the topic, and I hope that the information I've shared has been valuable. I can't think of anything that I would add. You did such a great job.
Fantastic. Okay, Hammy.
Honestly, yeah, I think the only thing that I would add maybe is how can I mentor someone who identifies as a different race? I think as an Asian American woman, I've definitely gotten my fair share of mentorship from people who identify as different races. And sometimes it works out really, really well. And other times it can be a little bit hard to get that mentorship that I need because my mentor either doesn't take the time to learn about my background and lived experiences, or they completely ignore our differences. And I don't think ignoring my identity is beneficial for either one of us. And so I definitely recommend, you address your differences and similarities in identities right off the bat and communicate about how you can best support each other. I think Jen mentioned this earlier, but mentorship is definitely a two-way street. So definitely, talk about that and have conversations early and often. I also encourage you to help your mentees or mentors form meaningful connections with other professionals who do share similar backgrounds as them so that they're getting different types of support. And, if you are someone that holds privilege, use that privilege to champion and advocate for your mentees and mentors and help them gain access to rooms and opportunities that they might not have had access to without you.
Love that. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. I'm looking through the chat. I see a lot of fantastic comments, not a lot of questions. What questions do we have? And as you all are thinking through your questions, one just add on, I would add, because I love what Hammy just said about if you're a person that has privilege, utilizing your privilege to support other individuals. One of the things that I think for me, candidly, it was about 2 years ago, I recognized for the first time that I have privilege. Right? I've always thought, well, I'm a woman, so I know I'm lower in the totem pole in the world than men. I'm Black. So again, right? The reality is I have so much privilege. I have so much privilege. I went through an exercise of doing a privilege flower and really recognizing, well, I also, I have a master's degree. My parents were very successful, fill out all of these components of the flower that makes me who I am. I just encourage all of us to recognize our privilege and the privilege that's been available to us before answering the question of, okay, and how can I use my privilege to make an impact in the world? And so just wanting to name that, because for me, it truly was an eye-opening experience to recognize I have a lot of privilege. Okay. What questions do you all have? Feel free to come off of mute, ask the question live, or throw it in the chat. We'd love to answer any questions.
I just put a question a little bit ago about, am I the only guy here? Because what's wrong with this picture? I had a little flashback when I noticed that. It's like, oh my goodness. A flashback to the 90s. I was starting my career in international marketing, and I always had a lot of friends of all ethnicities, a lot of white guys especially, and white men. And most of my bosses were women, white women who were in charge of public relations or advertising or international marketing groups. At least at my level, they were my boss. And always a good experience, by the way. I think we need more women in leadership because that's good for all of us, as opposed to the people who are missing here today. But I heard so many times when the diversity training trend or industry began to emerge, there were a lot of bad practitioners, not good people. The only qualification they had to do that was, oh, I represent some ethnicity, so therefore I'm a diversity expert. And they were going and not good, do bad things, really. They really hurt more than helped. And they were incompetent as a diversity training person or multicultural or intercultural competence training. And I had a lot of people that I know who trusted me, white guys who would say, oh, Rico, you know what diversity training means to me? A day off. I go golfing, I go fishing, something like that, which is what guys do. I guess I don't fish, I don't golf. But that's what I heard so many times. And then fast forward 20 years, here we are, 2024, and I'm the only guy in this kind of conversation. Where are the guys? And why are not here? And I don't know if in the registration list there were many men who didn't log in. Why? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't think it's one I could personally answer, right? I can't answer why there weren't more men that came to this conversation. I could speculate, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be the right solution either. I don't know the answer to who was all registered. I don't know if someone from PRSA could answer if there were other men registered for this conversation or not. But I think it's a really astute observation that there aren't other men on this call, and why.
And let's reach out. I mean, to me, that means let's reach out. I know a lot of, I feel like one of these stand-up comedians talking about friends. So I got a lot of white men friends, which I do, and colleagues and clients and so on. And many of them are very, very sensitive and educated about all of this. And I don't know, maybe they feel, somebody would feel like, oh yeah, that's, I cover that, that's too basic. I don't know what the reason would be, but I'm going to inquire people, my clients, when I have conversations with the men, and but I mean, I know a lot of great minority men who are very astute and very educated in these topics too, and it would be nice to have their input, and they have been part of groups like this in the past. Some of them are heads of ERGs in the various corporations in town. In fact, that's one good, well, see, it's not public relations. I network in so many different professional groups, and sometimes it's just an ERG or the Latino Chamber of Commerce or other ethnic chambers of commerce or groups. So you have people from many industries. This is industry specific. But anyway, just I think I may actually bring this topic up with some of my friends and see if they have any insights.
Yeah, thank you for that. Would love to have you report back into PRSA and let's see what we can find out. Okay, I see we have quite a few other questions in chat and about 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna jump into a couple of these. Jenny asks, what are some passive ways that a group can signal they are inclusive? I sit on a volunteer board that is currently not diverse and worry that someone looking into joining us would not feel comfortable. Anyone want to answer this?
I'll try to answer it. I get what you're saying. I'm struggling with the word passive though, because I don't know that this work can be done passively. I also serve on a completely unrelated industry board that we have been actively growing our diversity and our community engagement to historically underrepresented communities. And it's work, it's coffee meetings, it's talking to people. It's unlikely that you will recruit diverse board members without making those authentic personal connections and demonstrating the value to those individuals that they will bring and also receive from being with your organization.
Yeah, I agree with Jen. Just to add on, when I was serving on the Ad2 board during my first year, I was the only person of color. And so I talked to the senior leaderships on the board about my concerns that, the same thing. I want more diverse individuals to join our board. And I worry that looking at photos of our board and going to events with our board and not seeing that representation will hinder additional candidates. And so I made it a point to talk to all of my board members to say, hey, this upcoming recruiting season for new board members, let's reach out to all of our networks. Let's purposely send out the application to people that we want to see on our board. And let's set up those coffee conversations like Jen said. And let's have open Q&A sessions and to really make sure that everyone feels like they're equipped with the tools of succeeding on our board. And so you really do have to put in a lot of work. It really can't be passive.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, there's another question here. Taylor says, what advice do you have for a recent college graduate in diversifying your network? I saw Jen responded, gave her email address. I think that's a great response. I would also just add on, there are a lot of organizations that are purposefully working to diversify the marketing, advertising, PR, and communications professions. And no one organization can do this work alone. So there's many different organizations. I saw that Hammy had put several of them up earlier in the chat. As far as mentorship opportunities, I would say in general, follow those organizations on LinkedIn, bookmark their websites, see what they're doing in community, and then go network with those groups. So those groups are purposely looking to diversify the profession. There's alumni of those groups who are diverse. There are individuals with a heart and a passion to welcome people into those conversations. I can tell you on August 9th, the Brand Lab will have the end of our summer internship celebration, and we're inviting everyone to join us in community on that day. That would be a great place to show up and be part of starting to build a network. There's so many other opportunities out there as well. And so I would say, look beyond where you're currently looking and where you're currently networking for opportunities to engage with a further diverse group.
Yeah, I'll amend my chat comment to Taylor to say, go to the event on August 9th that Kelly just mentioned. That would be a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got 1 minute left, and I'm going to use that 1 minute just to thank everyone. I appreciate everyone being here today. So appreciative of all the feedback, all of the questions. Thank you to PRSA for putting together this courageous conversation, and to both Jen and Hammy for sharing who you are and your perspectives that you've gained in your experiences. I appreciate all of you and hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Kelly.